So now, as part of the law, in exchange for being able to certify that your heating system, particularly your oil supply line, complies with the requirements, again, that it's in a protected sleeve, or that it's run overhead, or that you have an oil supply valve, if you're able to certify those things, the insurance companies are required to offer to you coverage for some of the things that I just talked about that may not be covered under your policy. And so what they have to make available to you at a minimum from a property coverage standpoint, that's called first party coverage, but that means the property portion of your policy is a minimum of $50,000 of coverage for damage that might be caused to your home or your personal property and the cost to clean up a leak. So that's something that is generally probably not in your homeowner's policy now, but that the insurance companies are required to offer. The second piece that they're required to offer is the liability coverage. And they're required to offer a minimum of $200,000 of liability coverage for cleanup away from your property. Environmental cleanup that is required, say, at a neighboring property if the leak has spread away from your premises, that sort of thing. So those two things, $50,000 of coverage on-site cleanup, damage to your own property, $200,000 of liability coverage for cleanup elsewhere. A couple other points. Both of those coverages apply at the same time, so it is possible that a leak, as you can imagine, if it starts or emanates from your property, that you have a cleanup need on your own property, and if it spreads, you could need liability coverage for that, and both of those coverages apply simultaneously, and they could both be triggered by a single leak. And the other thing is that these are annual aggregate limits, meaning that that is the sum total that the policy will pay for those two areas, again, property and liability coverage under your policy. The insurance companies can apply a reasonable deductible, like no more than $1,000 is what the law states. And the actual endorsements that provide this coverage are long and they are detailed. And this is a brief summary, but an accurate summary, I think, of how they work. So another question people have is, gee, this sounds really good. How much does this cost? And the insurance companies are all in the process of filing their rates and filing their forms. And what I found on one website, this is the Mass Property Association website, and for a tank that is completely above ground, whether it's in your basement or whether it's outside, the coverage there, both the $50,000 of property and $200,000 of liability coverage, was in the $50 to $75 range, and that's an annual premium. So not too bad, not too bad. And if you have a tank that is partially or completely, let's say partially buried, the rates go up for that, and it could be in the $180 to $250 range for something like that. You don't have to buy the insurance coverage. It's kind of a one-way street, so they're required to offer it to you, but you are not required to buy it. But we would hope that it makes sense and that you would see that you might conclude that it's reasonably priced and it's a reasonable thing to do. In terms of next steps, if you know you're not in compliance, meaning that you're pretty sure, you don't see any orange on either end of your oil line or evidence of some other kind of sleeve coming up out of either end of the concrete, if your line is that way, then contact Bob at Crowley Fuel to have a licensed burner service technician come out and check that for you and be able to tell you whether you're in compliance or not. If you know you are in compliance and you want the insurance, you're still going to need some kind of evidence for the insurance company. And while it has not been, the companies are going to come to their own decisions about what they think is acceptable to them from an underwriting standpoint. But if you've got that burner permit dated on or after January 1 of 1990, that's pretty good documentation that your system should be in compliance. And if you need a copy of that, it should be available from your local fire department. I didn't call them and ask them first. Everybody's trying to get up to speed on these things. The oil heat industry is pretty well out ahead of this, and by the fact that you're here tonight and that Bob at Crowley Fuel is doing this seminar, Bob's clearly ahead of the curve on this and has been working on this. The insurance departments locally are getting up to speed on it. The insurance companies are in process of filing their forms and rates, so they're getting up to speed on it. But you should be able to get a copy of that burner permit from your local fire department. And again, if you're not sure about it, best thing to do is call Crowley Fuel, and then he'll send out a licensed burner service technician to confirm that for you. And when they do certify that, they're going to use the form, and I included a copy of the form in the packet. Bob mentioned it earlier, and that's the form that you would want to hold on to a copy of and have as evidence for your insurance company to get that coverage. Even though this is coming up on July 1, if you call your insurance agent or your insurance company right now, they are probably not going to be able to tell you exactly how much it costs, because that is still kind of in process and the insurance companies are working on it. I did provide you with some estimates that the Mass Property Association is using, and so as that deadline gets closer, they'll be more prepared to tell you exactly what it will cost and the terms and conditions of it for your specific policy. In terms of the resources that are available to you, the first one, Crowley Fuel. Your local fire department's a resource, your insurance agent is a resource, and again, everybody's working on this. The oil heat industry is out ahead of the insurance industry, I would say, but that'll all be coming, and that'll be available for July 1. Then the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, if you have website access, they've got an abundance of material for homeowners. I've included some of that material in the handout here, but that's a great resource as well. And this page is in the handout, and it's got the links to the various resources there at the DEP. Also in your packet from the Division of Insurance is a bulletin 2010-03, and that describes in a little more detail the insurance coverage that the homeowners insurance companies are required to offer to you. And again, a copy of that is in the packet. I also included a copy of the law in there, the Chapter 453 of the Acts of 2008. And then there was also a link there if you felt like you wanted more information about financial assistance that might be available for the upgrade.